Hello. Oh, light. Hello. How you doing, guys? I hope you can hear me. Now, to my right of my screen, there should be an area where you can put in questions to chat. If somebody could just put in, I can hear you or I can't hear you, that'd be great. Got a hi there. Can you hear me okay, Keita? Check the mic's working. Technology is not my strong point. Yes, good. Okay, you can hear me. That's grand. So, obviously, this is very new for me, and it's probably quite new for some of you guys to ask questions in such a manner. So don't be shy. Feel free. I won't read out your name. That'll make it easier because it's not something, we all necessarily we hold back thinking other people are, listening and whatnot. So feel free to just ask a question there, and I'll read the question out and then answer it the best I can. So we've got some questions previous, and one of them that I thought was pretty interesting was about merino neck blows. We don't shear many really wrinkly merinos in the Northern Hemisphere here. I think there are one or two about. I certainly came across some in France last year. So if they're really wrinkly, we go up what we call the bottom side of the neck. So obviously we've got the sheep push its head out and we're coming up. It's going to be the opposite, isn't it, in the camera? Up this side, cheek off. Under chin, and then cheek off on there. So if it's got a lot of wrinkle round about the neck here, you want to actually go down to get your entry, and there might even be a cross wrinkle. Then you want to come in with a handpiece chip up and then down across over the wrinkle, and then pull that wrinkle back out the way, and then come up the bottom side of the neck. Only if they're really wrinkly. Apart from that, you just sort of go up, stick on your top side and just go up gently. Just go up easy, but be prepared that your hand may have to do that. So the really wrinkly ones, this is actually quite interesting. They're just making them look white, a lot of them, because it's quite easy to take off a lot of skin through your teeth here. So if you're coming up with your handpiece and you can flatten it off and just get it squared up that neck, it's not ideal, but if you're only doing one or two and you're not getting the practice to get really good at it. The guys that get really good at those wrinkly neck ones, they're actually coming up, and to avoid second cuts, they're pushing that wrinkle down, or they're even coming back and pulling the wrinkle back a bit and then going again. So they've gone up over the wrinkle. Imagine my fingers. Fingers are the wrinkle. So they've come up over, they've pulled it back, and then they've gone again. But that's on where you've still got space to do it. Because some of the lambs, them real wrinkly merino lambs, the wrinkles are like this all along the skin. So when I first started there in Australia, my very first year, I was trying to get into those wrinkles, if you like. So imagine that sits here, dipping your comb in, and you're coming up, and you're in. Well, by the time I finished, they were all just cut, just tiny scratches down them. But because it was every wrinkle, it looked like red tiger stripes on those really wrinkly lambs. But the other thing that it caused was because I was doing this with my wrist all the time, it blew my wrist, and my wrist got repetitive strain, and I had to have a couple of days off for it to heal, which it could lead to something worse. But yeah, flicking out the wrist is a big thing. Flicking it, injuries. So yeah, wrinkles in the merinos, obviously, you just have to sort of change your angle on the entry and have a bit more feeling. Flatter the better, so you don't catch them. But no, good. Another question here from a friend. He's going for a tally. He's done 500. Oh, hold on. Keita's back. We'll just rewind that back. It's asking combs to use on merinos, so that's a good question. You want a long bevel comb. A short bevel may not even enter some of the merinos. Depends what they're like. In France, I have been using medium bevel combs. So your short bevel comb we've got a supercharger here. Looking for a longer bevel one. I don't actually have anything long bevel down. Yes, an Express. Something like this: long bevel, Express, Rebels, Proflex. What do I don't know if I can get that focused in there for you. Oh, maybe not quite focused enough. So you can see the end tooth. If you look at the end tooth, see how this one here is a lot rounder, and that's the difference. So this one's here's more like a dagger, as you can see on the tips, and this one here's more like your butter knife. So that's just to allow better entry, and it's got a lot more because the wool in the merino is very, very dense. So those points will just help you get entry and get through. Of course, some people also thin out their combs. They use a machine and they thin out these teeth here. Hold up there. So that they're making this just in the ends even thinner, so that it sits down on the skin better and it goes through the wool better. But you still need that point on those type of sheep that's in question. So, all right. Back to what we were saying about my mate looking for his tallies. So he's done 500 on ewes, which is quite a feat. It's quite impressive. But he's looking for now lambs. He's hoping to do 5, perhaps even 600 is the goals. And it's great to have goals. But the problem that he's having is we don't shear enough lambs here. So when you're only doing 2 or 3 days in lambs, or this goes for any sheep. If you're shearing great big fat sheep and then you're wanting to do a tally on small sheep, I think there's some good sheep there. Someone's already done it. The thing about this is you need practice in them sheep. And the harder the tally is, the more practice you're going to need. Even if you've sort of got the idea, you've got that ability, you still need to get that muscle memory into getting them good shearing sheep and getting around it to get practice in it. So different people I know have different goals. It's certainly something you need to put the hours in to really get up to those high tallies and hours on the correct sheep. For example, if you're shearing big fat sticky pre-lamb sheep, you're maybe only doing 100 a day, but you might be capable of doing 500 in lambs. But you won't be able to do it if you've not had that experience and that day in, day out practice, getting the pattern different, holding them different, because everything feels a little bit strange for those that don't get onto those good shearing sheep, as we call them, good shearing. But it's just more work. It's more work. You've got the other thought of you're not pulling out as many sheep if you're actually doing them slower. Like you could be doing 100 in a day, 150, and it's not as hard on your back. You're not having to pull them out the race or out of catching pens. So that certainly helps on your body, and you generally get paid more. So a friend of mine, for example, he used to work between here in Australia, and he did a stint in New Zealand, a couple of stints in New Zealand, and he wasn't a big fan of New Zealand money-wise. He said he made more money in Australia, and it was a lot easier on his body shearing the merinos than it was shearing the Romneys. You could shear 150 merinos, for example, found it easier on his body. To make the same money, had to shear something like 330 Romneys in New Zealand. So it gives you, everything's different, and everything has perspectives, and it depends what your goals are and what you want to do. Questions about the new handpiece SFX. One sitting here, nice and blue. I don't know if it's any slimmer. I think it's maybe slimmer here at the back end. There's a cup compared to the FX. They're not making the FXs anymore, so this is what we're going to be using in the future, unless you go back to the Icon, the original. But like any Heiniger handpiece, it seems to run very well out the box. Well, even the Icon, you had to break it in a bit more, but these ones you don't seem to, doesn't take as long to break in, especially some of the orange ones, the FXs that I've had, they break in straight away. You just use it and they're just nice and they're just smooth. How long they last? Probably not as long as other handpieces, but I think it's just because they're that fine-tuned, they're going off. You feel it going off a bit quicker. So I was saying some people seem to get a good amount of sheep out of them, and others get say 6,000, and they're starting to feel it a little bit, and then other people have 10,000. Somebody had 15,000 out of his SFX, around about that number, which I think is a good number, and he was actually having a moan that it was starting to rattle. Well, it's maybe time he changed some of the parts just to make it run smoother again. We can go into that in another. I'll maybe make a video on that, because just now I'm getting some hand pieces all renewed. They'll be reflocked, and we'll be repairing all of it. All the bearings and the long kit will be put in. So it'll be interesting to see if it's actually worthwhile, getting them fixed up, or you're as well just trading them in and buying a new one. I mean, if you think a guy's done 15,000 sheep, it probably only works out at something like 3 point something pence per sheep. So I would say the handpiece has paid for itself. I think they seem expensive to start with, but if you think you could buy a chainsaw for a similar price, the handpieces will do as much work, if not more. You'll be using that every day, day in, day out. So not too bad when you look at it that way. If you're not shearing many sheep, it should last a very long time. But again, that just depends on the conditions of the sheep. I know when I shore in Spain, just in one certain area, I did a few seasons in Spain. One area I was in Zaragoza, which was a village called Mediana de Aragon, which the shearers were all punks. And that area there, it just didn't seem to get any rain. And the sand, I think 2 weeks was all I got out of the handpiece, and that was it. It was just worn out. It's just so much sand going through it. So that brings me on to something else. It's obviously going to help if you service your handpiece. Make sure there's not anything too gunked up in areas here and here. I've taken the rubber off of that. But the front here, so I see a lot of people getting in, and they're always cleaning that out. Every run they're cleaning out the second cuts that build up in there. Hold on a minute. Hold on a second, guys. Here we go. So see how that's built up in here. Oh, go on the other side. A bit more there. There we are. That there, I'll leave that in there unless it gets really blocked up. Because that there is stopping, as I said in Zaragoza, if you had that in there, it's stopping all that sand getting up in there and wearing the inside of your handpiece. Now, a lot of controversy with that, because a lot of people are going to say you should be getting in there and oil it all out. You've got your oil hole down here, and you can put oil in here. You can put a good bit of oil in there to make sure that the falcon cup is getting covered. So that then brings me on to a bit of maintenance. So I did say to one of the Heiniger guys that I thought these wore out quite quick, and he was blaming me for screwing this down first and then putting oil on, and not putting oil in here at all. But realistically, you're not going to put oil on and then start fiddling about with holding that on. Next thing, the cutter falls off. The idea is you don't want to put your tension down. So if you can imagine your Falkland cup is a ball and you're going down on top, you want to get that oil in there before that squeezes down on top. That's the idea. So you could certainly do it at the start, but when you're busy doing a cutter change, quite often I wouldn't oil in there. Sometimes I'd have my cutters oiled on a shelf and just put them in and go with that. And the past handpieces seem to last okay. So pinch of salt. But good. Okay, someone asked if I can shear their dog. I have shown dogs before. I don't really enjoy doing it. It's not the right tool for the job, and generally, if it's not going to a poodle parlour, it's probably going to bite you. Mo Man used to shear a few, actually. Alpacas, llamas, like to have a go at them. There was somebody on a course last year, and that's what she did. She actually was leaving here. She did it here, and she's going to Australia, perhaps America, but definitely Australia, to shear alpacas. So that was quite interesting. Me and Andy got asked to shear a donkey. Well, it wasn't a donkey; it was a mule. When we were in Spain, so Andy had to get the shoulder and keep pulling it into me. It wasn't good. It was a bit of a fiasco, actually, but it was fun. He was enjoying himself. Andy was enjoying himself. The biggest mistake I see in learners. There's a few of them. The biggest one is probably not changing their gear or not having the handpiece in the wool, and then the gear gets hot and the cut goes off too quick, and then they start screwing it down. I'll do a video on it. So what happens is you're shearing away, and you'll even not even learners. This could be guys that can shear, and maybe they're just on sheep that's more sensitive than what they're used to. So they're shearing away, and then suddenly the sheep starts kicking out, and they're thinking it's just a bad sheep. I mean, it can happen. You just think that's just an awkward sheep. So you go to get another one, and it does the same, and you should start thinking something's up by then. Go and grab another one, and it's still kicking, and you're upsetting the sheep. You're doing something to upset the sheep. So 9 times out of 10, it's going to be your cutter. Your cut's going off. But what happens is most people then screw it down and carry on. If you do that, you're going to be scoring into your comb, heating up your comb. I'm using my hands, and I've got a handpiece here. Heating up the comb by putting too much, screwing that right down. You can see how I can hardly move that now. So that heats it up, and then it's going to get blunt, and then when it gets blunt, it's going to start pulling the wool more than cutting it, and that's what's going to cause the sheep to kick. So yeah. Question here for Jim. Do I oil the tension knob threads, or do I keep them dry? Never used to, but then, yeah, I seen it was Hamish Mitchell, actually. I was with him, and as you can see, it's got grease in it. Brand new one. It's got a bit of grease in there. He used to just do that, just wipe a bit of grease on it. Didn't actually. It's just they say not to do it, but it's really just so people don't get misinformed and then end up filling up this with grease or oil. But just a little bit of grease in there. To be honest, you'd be lucky if I do it once a season. It's kind of like one of those things. If it's smooth and it's going all right, you know, you're not feels nice. It's fine. It should be fine. But yeah, just give it a clean out. You can just rub a bit of grease in there, and that'll do the job. Of course, you're putting grease in here. That should be all greased up. But yeah, but oil do the same thing. But you don't pour it in there. I've got food call, which will not take. Grand. Yep. Certainly oil helps. Good oil. Don't use vegetable oil. I think that can ruin your handpiece. Just clog things up. Use good oil. Use your Formula One oil, as Mr. Mitchell said once. But yeah, just good engine oil. Just what you put in your car will do. Yeah, so that's the biggest mistake I've seen learners is probably just letting their gear go off and then not realizing when it's blunt. Just like change your cutter. 4 cutters to the comb is sort of rule of thumb, but it doesn't always just quite work like that. But we used to work on, you were doing 4 cutters. Every 15 minutes you change your cutter, and then in the hour you change your comb. And a lot of people would stop in the hour, have a good drink, change their comb, and then get back into it. Then, of course, you have another break. Yep. So then you're looking at 8-hour day, looking at 8 combs, around about your 40 cutters. Sometimes it's 20 minutes for a cutter. Sometimes it's 10 minutes. Sometimes I've seen me change it halfway through a sheep if the sheep's really sandy. Stop in the long blow, and you're changing. Not good when that happens, mate. But it does happen. Where are we? Another mistake that I'll see in learners is they're trying to hold the sheep all the time with just the left hand. And it takes, if they start off, just thinking that's what they've got to use, then they're not using their legs enough. They're not using we call it footwork, and it is footwork. It is footwork moving things around, because you need to move your feet to get that balance. But as much as anything, you're squeezing with your legs in certain areas, or you're getting down. We're moving around the sheep. A lot of learners they're too up here, they're too stiff, and they're trying to just grab the sheep and then just shear it on. But yeah, that's where we are with learners. Sheep numbers declining. There has been a huge decline of sheep numbers in New Zealand, which is a real shame, because I used to love New Zealand when I went there. I thought of it as the playground of shearing. You're getting there, you're getting good numbers, you're getting day in, day out shearing in a sort of really structured and really organised fashion. So yeah, used to really enjoy that. But I think since I've been there, which would be cool, it's probably something like 17 years ago, 18 years ago, it's really dropped the sheep numbers, so it's not quite the same as it used to be. They don't seem to be doing the full days. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe the days are too long. But certainly you shear different. If you're doing day in, day out, full days, it's I suppose the same as like running a marathon rather than just running 5 kilometers every day. You've got to prepare yourself different. Hydration. You've got to prepare your mind, prepare your equipment, and you're going on that pace. Whereas if you're just doing half a day or 6 hours, you can actually pick up the pace a bit more, because you've got 2.5 hours extra recovery time. Yeah, speaking of recovery, how hard do we push ourselves? It's always something that it's definitely a personal thing, and how hard you want to go in the day. But I used to push myself too hard. A lot of people push themselves too hard, and then you've got some people that are just lazy. But I think there's a happy medium, and definitely when what you want to really be doing mentally is finish it, so that when you're lying in bed at night, you're feeling a bit tired. You're like, I could have done more. I could have done more. You don't want to be lying in bed at night and saying, I have absolutely myself. I'm absolutely shattered. How am I going to do tomorrow? You never get you're never going to get, that was just the perfect day. I feel fine, but I couldn't have done any more. So let's say 70% of your maximum is probably what you're looking at. But a lot of the time you're looking for rhythm and just getting the connection and everything right to shear more sheep anyway. A lot of the time, most of the time. What would you use to disinfect handpiece between farms of shearing sheep with scab? Sheep dip. Either give them just a hell of a good wash. Sheep dip, get that on it, and then just get it dried off as quick as possible. You're probably more looking at, I don't know where you are, but we have trailers, so I've seen us pressure wash them off, and it does the job. But I haven't actually. I have gone in the past when we were younger from farm to farm that have had scab, and have never actually passed it on. We haven't washed everything that we've had. Hand pieces, a little dip and something, but our moccasins didn't get washed. The foot and mouth was actually quite interesting, talking about disinfectant. So we used to go into every farm, and every farm they'd come and spray the tires of your car. And there was only 3 farms out of, let's say, 25, maybe more, maybe 30 that we visited. And them 3 farms, one of them always pressure washed it to leave the trailer there the night before anyway, so they always pressured it off. So there's only actually 2 that were like concerned because of the foot and mouth. And one guy just wanted to check our combs. It was like, but we wash them and we grind them every night anyway. He didn't actually bother about we got really slack by this point, because it's like nobody seemed to care. So and we never passed anything on. It's a good question though, because I know in some areas in Norway they actually had moccasins on the farm, so you couldn't then take your moccasins with you. You had to leave them in your car. But the guy that shore before me had something like size freaking 12 feet, and I'm a size 9. So he'd given up the run, and I'd taken on a few of the sheds. So I've got about this much sticking out the end of my bloody foot trying to get around these sheep, and of course they're stuck underneath it, and you're pulling away, and not ideal, but at least it kept the farmer happy, keeping the customer happy. So yeah. If you guys don't want to ask a question, just bang up where you're from. That'd be cool. Got a job offering this summer for a camera assistant. Isn't really assistant. It'd be somebody doing some camera work and helping out with some other things. I've got all the equipment, just need somebody to actually use it. So if you know of anybody that's interested, drop me a PM or DM, whatever you call it. Countries that you can travel about and work in is, well, great. How long's a piece of string? Australia, I still think it's really good experience. Really, wherever you go, it doesn't matter. You just want to get in good people and a good gang. I mean, that's what it's all about. If you can get in and have good fun, then you're going to enjoy your job. But yeah, there's Europe. I'll be going to France in March this year and take a couple of courses at, near Marseille in La Crau. Probably not pronounced that properly. And I think I also made a promise that I would be able to speak a few words of French, so which I can't. France was good. There was, it's a good place for us this year. Good fun. Some old friends there. It was all cover comb. Cover combs for you, those that don't know. Winter comb, you might know it better as. I think you use quite a lot of these in parts of America as well. We use it in the winter New Zealand. There we go. Got 9 teeth. And see the gaps in between them. I can't quite fit my fingers in, but little fingers could. There's your comparison. Your normal comb, your winter comb. And if you can see down the back, it lifts up a little bit. And the idea of this is it leaves a bit of a covering on for the sheep so it doesn't get cold. So you have to be really careful around the ears and especially around the hamstrings. No, I've not shown in America. I would love to go to America. When I was younger and I did the world circuit before I had kids, it was a place that I never actually got to. It clashed with Norway at the time. I used to go to Norway around about that season. But yeah, a little regret there. Wouldn't mind to get out there and shear a few. They look big. Seen a few videos. Look really big sheep. But that would be good. That would be good. What I have heard about America, nobody's ever actually came back and said they were fantastic shearing or the conditions were great, but they did say the Americans were fantastic. So that's a thumbs up for the Americans. Yeah, but a big country too, so I don't know. It would be, it would take a bit of organising if I was to do a little tour and hopefully, do a few schools here and there would be great. Armenia was, we were there in August and I took a school there last spring as well. So that was really interesting. I'll tell that story another time. It was good, somewhere different. Going to Norway in a couple of weeks. So I haven't been there for 15 years. Going over there with Andy and we'll be working for Chettle, so that should be good fun. Just a couple of weeks. And then we'll do a course in Iceland. So we're doing a shearing school there. So I'm looking forward to getting back to some of those Icelandic sheep. The Icelandic sheep, on film, on video, they look fantastic. And they are generally all right combing. But boy, kick Christ off his cross. Never consistently shorn so many sheep, like day after day, that are just absolutely tense, packed full of muscle. It's the genetics. It's the way they've bred them. They never used to be like that. But they've really worked on the genetics, and but they've built a stocky, angry, very prolific, very muscly, just what a farmer wants, but not a shearer's dream. And they're not as easy as people think they would be. But yeah, Iceland, it's pretty cool. So yeah, Spain, the home of the Merinos. If there's any Australians on there, they probably argue that they've changed them, which they have. The Merino came from Africa. Spanish managed to make the wool white because obviously you can't dye the black wool, so they made the wool white, and then it would be the Australians which actually bred these big wrinkles into it to get the massive wool, and the wool was worth a fortune. The wool was worth any wool was worth a lot of money back in the old days. My old man still talks about how the wool used to pay the rent of the farm, even blackie wool. So imagine that. The wool paid for the rent of the farm or paid the shepherd's wage or something like that. It's just incredible. Yeah, maybe we'll be able to charge a wee bit more, wouldn't we, as shearers? He actually used to stop and get two drinks, but I'm not sure if that was 2 pints or half pints in the pub on the way home. So, yeah, what would that be now? I don't even know what it is in a pub. Don't go to the pub. What is it? Anybody know how much it is for a pint? £5 in some places, £6 maybe. So that'd be like, if you got 2 pints, if it was pints, even if it was half pints, full pint, £6, you're charging £6 a sheet. Yeah, that'd be great. What combs do you use to shear lambs? Okay, depends on the lambs. Generally, you want something a little bit thinner on the lambs. Lambs are very, very sensitive, and that's when it comes to the smaller the lamb, the more sensitive it is. And that's when I was talking earlier about the tension. You got to get that tension just right. You don't want your handpiece fair flipping over. You want it just sitting. So when you switch it on, it'll turn a little bit before it flips, or it flips at all. If your gear's curring that well, and you switch it on and it's turning around the board like that, it takes a wee while or gets quite far before it flips or doesn't flip, and you're able to still get it cut, then it just makes that feeling, because you've got, especially Romney lambs, you're going out the legs, there's little legs. Like, I've got quite big hands, but generally it's nice. It's fingertip control, and you're wanting to just float around them lambs. So if you're getting something out the packet, you're going more your ground in combs. What I've got in there, I've got charger on there, such a full thickness, and we've got our superchargers. Again, it's just preference, depends on the lambs. But if you're starting out, supercharger's probably fine. Something like that. If you're needing something that's just a little more pointier because you find they're too round, and you'll know it because when you're putting it in, it's not going smooth, it's bouncing, it's forcing to go up in the points like that. You're holding the handpiece lightly, it's going along, you're forcing. Maybe I should do that with a handpiece so you can see better. So if you're holding it nice and loose and it's staying flat and you can feel it and you can steer your bottom and top teeth, no problem. But if it's getting sticky and then you're coming up like that, you can see how that can end up driving in and cutting it. So that's why sometimes something a bit pointier actually just enables you to keep that light hand and move around the sheet. You don't necessarily want anything super thin, but if it's thinner, then I think it was Simon Tangley, that used to work for Heineken. He had the analogy that, imagine chopping a tree like a sapling, and you're cutting it up here. It's going to be bending. But if you're cutting it down near the earth, it's not going to bow as much, and it's going to come off. And he had his wrong handpiece. He had the similar idea with being lower down. I'm pretending with screwdriver's wool here. So you're not up. So the thinner it was, the closer you are there, and it'll actually cut it without getting that bend as you're driving that handpiece through. Majoring in the minors here, but yeah. So, of course, people do dress combs. They do round them up a little bit once they get thinner, once they go off the scallop. I used to like probably lamb combs just off the scallop. So, turn it around. So this up here, it doesn't get ground, if you can imagine. That's set back. You can see how that's set back, the scallop. And as the comb grinds down, that's going to go away, and you're only going to be left with a little bit or nothing at all. and then it's going to be quite pricky. So you need to get very, very light sandpaper and just take the edges off that. It's a bit of a skill. I think I have tried to make a video of it, but I'll try and make a more detailed one, because that obviously saves you a lot of pounds too. If that's real pointy in certain type of sheep, once the scallop's gone and that's catching on the skin, you can't really necessarily use that comb. You need to round it up, so then you're going to get twice your money's worth if you do learn how to do that. Can you use a flat head comb? I'm guessing you're meaning like a short bevel, or are you meaning ones that don't have the gliders out? You meaning the narrower combs? If that's the case, yes, you can. Yes, you can, young shepherd. But yeah, fingertip control on the lambs, small lambs. We used to do tiny lambs. I don't think they do them as much now in New Zealand, where you did mob shearing. So you would shear the ewes, and then the lambs would shed off, but they'd be sitting in behind them. You'd do a big mob of ewes, it could take you 3 hours, and then you do a mob of the lambs afterwards. And they were small. They were small milk lambs. Sometimes you're only like 2 combs down that belly. You know, you couldn't fit 3. That's how small they were. And to do that, you just had to be fingertip control. How much lead do you have, shear and crossbred, ewes on the comb? Depends again on. It depends on the ewe. There's so many different. Second shear, full wool, but even different areas, just the climate, everything can change with this question, but it's still a really good question. So you can see how much lead I've got on there. Just explain lead a little bit. So the area we're talking about lead is where you've got your cutter to where the scallop starts there. This area here. So this here, see, I'm not used to this camera here. That's I would hardly ever use that. In fact, I don't think I ever would now. So it is a good point. Your lead, if you put it up too close, you can end up cutting them. That being said, your hand will adjust to what you get used to. So if I'm used to the lead further back and used to feeling and pushing it that way, and then suddenly I'm banging it right up here, you're going, oh, I'm too close. It might not be the case. It just might be that you have to flatten off your hand and you have to get used to, you have to adjust, and that takes a few sheep and takes a bit of time. But the difference between here and here, just that little difference, say the cutter was right up there, and then there, just tiny bit of difference can make a difference of 50 sheep in a day. If you're just having to push that little bit and you just put the lead up that little bit more and it's stopping you pushing, the difference is just absolutely huge, because the sheep they're not, everything's lighter. You're lighter, the sheep are lighter. Just makes a huge difference. It's a bit of trial and error with the lead. And you'll get used to breeds and things like that. For example, guys in competitions will probably go safer in the heats, and then when they're wanting to, they're going to be pushing that handpiece harder, they'll get the lead up, perhaps, depending on the person and the sheep, depending on the climate. If the sheep are really sweaty, you might not want necessarily the lead to be up as much, because it might be just catching in there. We'll have it back, you don't need it, so you can be safer. So you don't need it up as much. It's a really good question. It's little fractions like that can make such a huge difference. I remember the first time when I was in New Zealand and Aaron Tahuya was doing a comb up for me. Much respect to the Tahuya family. Dean, my dad showed me the basics and went out to New Zealand. Dean Tahuya, he took us on, and he had his own different way of teaching back then, which involved the grinding spanner and bashing your toes if they were in the wrong place. But he was a good guy and it was good fun. But Aaron was doing this comb up for me, and it was him that said it can make a difference of 50 sheep a day. So that's providing you're doing 350 or something, say, or maybe 400. At that point in time, it wasn't going to make a difference of 50 sheep to me in a day. It might have made a difference of 15, but that was still a lot, because I needed them 15. Needed the beer tokens. Good, good. Little Zach's been mucking about with screwdrivers. For those that don't know, Zach's my son, and he's taped a magnet to it. Not for going on your handpiece, so then it can go on the stand. So when we're shearing on a metal stand in Norway, for example, or Spain, some areas don't have anywhere to put a bag or a shelf. So he saw guys do something similar with the oil bottle. They used to tape a magnet around the oil bottle, and then you just stuck it on to the stand. But one guy actually put the magnet inside his oil bottle, and I thought that was genius. And he had magnets in his stand, and then he just get a little squirt of oil, and then he just sort of more or less just threw it at the stand, and it stuck to it. Stops the sheep kicking it away. Some of them had their spray cans for the cut, and they would do the same procedure. It's really quite handy because it all saves you a bit of time and saves the caps coming off things and whatnot. Good, good. Oh, great question. Right. Question is, how often should we be re-greasing the handpiece and taking it apart to clean? The reason why I'm laughing is because I am I'm going to be a hypocrite here. This handpiece was used last season, and I think I would have greased, just as I showed you before in here. I would have just checked that if there was grease in there. Well, I'll put it on the camera. You can see it's needing grease. It's needing a bit of grease in there. It's got a bit. If this starts getting hot at the front, you feel where it gets hot in your handpiece. If it's hot at the front, it's probably because you've not got grease in there. But yeah, going back to how often, if it's running well, lanolin's obviously running through here. It's on here. You're chucking oil in there. Unless there was a problem like the back end here went tight, maybe something's got jammed in there. It doesn't really happen as much now. The seals must be better. As far as taking your handpiece apart and putting it back together, I wouldn't. A couple of times a season, if that. Might even just do it at the end of the season. How much you take apart, though, is the question. Don't go mucking about with this. You see how there's a bit of red paint on there? I don't know if that's just a Heiniger UK thing. I think it's quite a new thing, and generally it's so they know if you've been tampering with it. So if it's a new handpiece and it's not cutting, don't go tampering with it, just send it back because it's new. But as shearers, we're going to tamper with it. So then when we do that and it still doesn't cut, they'll say, well, you've been mucking about with it. But yeah, if you do that and you play with that, you're going to have to end up getting this tool to measure in here to make sure it's set properly. What else you need is the cutter of a certain thickness. I'm going to get back to finishing your question in a second. Hold that up. Can you see that there? You see the writing in there? It's not focusing. Yeah. To be used with guide, because it's a 3mm. So that's what the handpieces are set to. That's what you're setting your handpiece to. So that's why thinner cutters actually run better. You buy them thick cutters and they don't actually cut straight away because they need to, because it's not because they're not cutting, it's because the handpiece isn't set to it. So what you need to do is grind them down a bit. So that's why I always buy running cutters, because I don't have the patience to be moaning at stuff not cutting and grinding, and then the next day is the same. I want to buy diamonds, which is thicker than this a little bit, but it's only going to be a couple of grinds away. Generally, it's still going to go better than a new cutter. But yeah, back to greasing. Pull the chicken feed out. You can take all this out and just check everything's clean in here. But I would only take this apart at the back if I was having problems with movement. But apart from that, I've seen me have a handpiece that will have shown thousands and thousands of sheep and not have a problem, and I'm not maintaining it. Just keep the oil in. Just keep the oil in. When you stop and get that cutter, Just get the oil in there or put it in through here, and it should be fine. It's more for storage. That's when people usually wreck their handpiece. It's when they finish the season, and then they chuck it in the shed, and then it gets rusted, and it's seizes up. Best place. The best thing to do, I've tried rice, I've tried other things. It's all just a bit of a flaff. This handpiece here, we're well through the winter now. No rust in it. You see, I haven't even cleaned it. I did clean it out, went to Sweden, and then I haven't cleaned it since I came back from there. That's just been in the airing cupboard. So if you have an airing cupboard somewhere warm, I've got my combs in there, my cutters in there, I've got 5, 6, 7 handpieces in there, and because it's got the big water tank, it's always getting heated up, then it doesn't have a problem with rust. But yeah, always handy to carry grease around with you though, because there's nothing worse than this getting hot because you haven't got grease and you don't have any grease about. So a little tube of grease is a handy thing to carry around with you. Things you need to carry around with you: tube of grease, try oil. I mean, if you get off the farmer, that's fair enough, but it might not bring you the best stuff. Stitching needle for the sheep. Some cotton to go with it. If you're desperate, get some dental floss. It doesn't come out, but you're still better having. It's not going to have that infection, isn't it? It's disinfected. So, but yeah, cotton it'll rot away once the sheep's healed up. But a bit of just be prepared. First aid kit for yourself as well as the sheep. I've seen us take that sort of binding tape. See people using it on themselves or horses or something. You know, the stuff that grips together. Can't remember what you call it. Take that with us as well. It's just handy for if something happens, like a sheep breaks a leg in the yard, even though it's not your fault. You're going to be a bit of a hero if you can get that fixed up. So speaking of, may as well just go into breaking legs. So say you break the leg there. One way is to get that blue alkathene pipe for water pipe, cut it, and then wrap it around with what I just said. If you can, wrap it tight, not tight enough that it stops the circulation. Hopefully the farmer keeps it nearby, doesn't send it to the hill, and put it past. To start with, put it past the foot so it has something to walk on. Maybe you could argue then it's not getting the compression for the bone to heal together, but it's going to be in a lot less pain. It's very rarely it sort of heals really good. So that's one way. Another people use the insulation for your water pipes, and they get that wrapped around. But it's better than trying to get 2 sticks together that way and a bit of string. It's just going to come off. So yeah, hopefully you don't have to do that, but it does happen. So I think that's about us, guys. I'll wrap it up there. Oh, I've got to do the draw. The draw for the Shearing School hoodie. So you can choose your colour, provided I've got them in stock. It's for the Patreon members. Long tail hoodie, or like the one I've got on. For those that don't want long tail, some people don't. I've got the shorter, slightly thicker one there. So I've got all your names, because I didn't know how to do it digital online. All your names there, cut out with the good old scissors. What are they called? Chakotay copies. Got your names in there. So we'll draw this out and we'll call it a night. Need a drum roll, don't I? Need to get a bit more onto this. Okay, so the winner is Darren Redford. Well done. You get a hoodie. I'll send you an email. I've got your email address on here too. Won't that focus? If you can see enough here. Shouldn't be giving you his email, but I don't think you were quick enough to get that. So good. Thank you very much for joining tonight, guys. And we'll do another one of these hopefully in a month's time. So if you've got questions then, that would be good. You might all need to get into a bit of shearing before you have anything. Patreon members, remember I do free analyze your video. You send it through to me. That's completely private, unless you say, "No, I'm cool." You can put it on and rip me so everybody else learns from it. But no, I understand if you don't want to. Just put that through, and then I can have a chat with you about what I can see through the video that you're doing right or wrong. So don't have it, half a field away and ask how you're shearing, because I've got to be able to see what's going on. So yeah, and I'll try and keep up with that as best I can. So that's a good bonus for you guys. And also, if you've signed on to a course, anything from January that you've put into the Patreon. So if you're a £10 a month, we're calling them Patreon credits, you will get that money back on I'm going to say the day of the course, but round about then when we get organized. So if it's 6 months from January to your course, that'll be your money back in them 6 months. And then I'm going to carry that on. So that'll roll on. So then your next months will roll on. If you miss 2 years, it will roll on until you come in a course, and then you can get your money back. So that's pretty good deal for you, I would say. But thank you, everybody. I think for the first time we've done something like this, it wasn't too bad. All the best. Hear from you all soon. Cheers. Bye. That's where I end streaming. There we go.